Neon Genesis director Hideaki Anno doesn't believe creating for the global market is the way to go. I'm sorry, but the audience will have to be the one to adapt. Can I get a based in the comments? Like, this is a Christmas miracle. Someone of Hideaki Anno's status saying something like this is music to my ears, and it is currently making waves throughout the entire internet right now in the anime and manga community, and even spaces, creator spaces, individuals that have worked on manga or anime over the years. Like, this individual right here was talking about the situation, and you can see that they have worked on, for instance, Street Fighter, Gundam, they've done robot design, Code Geass, Star Ocean, you get the point. There is a lot of individuals, translators, etc. that is talking about this and in complete agreement with Hideaki Anno's statement, and it's just being talked about everywhere in all forms of like the anime industry and community around the world. You have different places, for instance, you have this one as well, Fuji News covering it, you have 11,000 likes on this one, you have 49,000 likes on this one with almost 3 million views, you go to this one, it has like, 250,000 views, you have all this different type of stuff of people talking about this. It's very clear it's resonating with a lot of people, and for very good reason, because anyone that has been paying attention to the anime and manga community for at least the last few years has definitely seen the massive shift that the culture has taken, to where nowadays that it seems like anime is trying to conform to a global audience and no longer trying to be what made it popular to begin with, and we'll get into that in a second. But the point is Hideaki Anno even making a statement like this, I feel like is going to resonate with a lot of like industry veterans and creators that have been kind of scared to speak out, probably now speaking out about this subject because it is very important to talk about, because their culture is being forced to change or censor itself to fit modern global audiences and diversity, which I think is just legit not a good thing at all. But before I get into my personal opinions and talking about all this different type of stuff, let's get into what this article has to say and what Hideaki Anno even said as well, and what, even brought this article to life in the first place. So as I've already read the title, let's get into actually what the article says. The Japanese content industry has been steadily going global over the past few years, thanks to COVID. And with increasing government support and a fleshed out expansion strategy, it is estimated to reach a market size of 20 trillion yen by 2033. Recently, Neon Genesis director Hideaki Anno sat down with Forbes Japan to talk about the changes this has brought to the industry as it further expands into the overseas market. When asked how these changes are impacting the way Japanese content is made and distributed, Anno remarked that anime and film studios haven't made any consensus changes in the past years. Even though the environment itself has slightly changed, I personally never made anything with the overseas audience in mind. I can only make domestic stuff. Production companies are quick to say, think about the overseas markets, but personally, that's not my goal, he explained. My stance is simple. It first needs to be a work that will be well received and found interesting in Japan, but if by any chance people overseas also found it interesting, I'd be grateful for that. Anno mentions that working on Eva 3.0 plus 1.0 thrice upon a time, he wasn't considering the overseas market at all. Apparently, he decided to produce the film independently because it meant no one else could interfere, and he was ready to take full responsibility for it regardless of how well it performed financially. Anno explains that the making a film for a non-Japanese audience comes with some considerable difficulties, especially the language barrier. Works that are made through a Japanese thought process can only be understood in Japanese. Film has both visual and sound elements, so compared to other forms of storytelling, the language barrier is not that. However, lines in the script are still in Japanese, and the drama is achieved through the thoughts and feelings of the characters experienced in Japanese. The Eva director remarks that such works can be well received overseas as well, given that the audience understands the intentions and nuances of the narrative expressed in Japanese. However, he also says that as a creator, he cannot accommodate his work to the audience. I'm sorry, but the audience will have to be the one to adapt, he said. Compared to video games, which are interactive media, film is a one-way road, Anno explains. Even if the audience complains, that doesn't necessarily mean that the complaints are reaching the creators. Film isn't a medium that accommodates its contents for the viewer. That's why the audience has to trust the creators and what is interesting, and that's why I think it's completely fine to keep production domestic, he says. Even Ghibli and Miyazaki stick to domestic production, and I'm sure that they don't even think about overseas markets. As Anno suggests, overseas promotion promotion can come later, and that's not something creators should be concerned about. We should let business people turn our works into products and sell them. That's the best course of action, he said. But a part of why Japanese works haven't been able to make it to the West until now is because we were kind of bad at selling them, the Ava director remarks. So, to get into a long story short, Hideaki Anno more or less says that when he is in the creator room, he is creating his works or what he's doing, he is just focusing on the domestic market within Japan. He is creating his work for the Japanese audience, and he doesn't want to even trouble himself with business suits or, how the product is going to do overseas. He focuses clearly on telling a story meant for the Japanese people within Japan, and that's basically it. He tells a traditional story that the Japanese community would be able to fully embrace and be passionate about. And he thinks that, trying to cater to a different audience is not necessarily a good thing because he wants to focus on the domestic at first. And I think that this legitimately is an interesting thought perspective that a lot of people have lost in this day and age. For instance, you have people that are constantly chasing global markets and chasing overseas markets around the world with many of their different products to be able to sell as much product as possible. For instance, make a product for everyone, which eventually means it's a product for no one. And I feel like Hideaki Anno more or less is stating that he is just focusing on something that works. He's focusing on something that has continuously proved that it is doing very well, and why would he want to change it up? And I completely agree. The reason why anime resonates with so many people overseas and why so many people love anime is because it was strictly made for the Japanese. It was made for the Japanese community. It was made for people within Japan. It wasn't technically made in mind for those overseas in the West. It was always made for people to sit down in Japan and watch their shows on TV or whatever. That's what it was for. But obviously, nowadays, thanks to the access to the internet, thanks to being able to go on different streaming services or whatever, you're able to watch, anime a lot easier now. But even then, it's definitely caused a shift in the way anime and manga is created nowadays, to where a lot of creators probably think of overseas audiences to be able to get their product out there and sell it a lot better and be able to get more recognition and money. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is a completely bad thing. I'm not. However, I do think that it misses the real reason to why there is such a global demand for anime and manga, is because it is fundamentally different. It is not Disney. It is not Marvel. It is not Star Wars. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's something completely different. It is not something that the West is normally used to. It is a completely different product, completely different type of storytelling that just people are really not aware of. And only the close-knitted otaku community for all these decades are aware of it. But the reason why it has resonated and blown up in such a high degree, besides obviously COVID, is because of how different it is from the stories that are so tired and overused over and over again within Western media. And so Hideaki Anno wanting to cater to people within the East, catering to people within Japan, I think is the best thing, because it will allow the anime to continue to flourish and gain popularity and, people to talk about it, but also keep it to why people like it, instead of saturating it and dumbing it down, censoring it, and trying to make it for everyone when that wasn't the point of why anime became popular to begin with. I think that legit, this is an incredible thing that the actual director of Neon Genesis said. This is a statement that honestly I'm just so proud of to see, because the fact that he even went on record to talk about, like, for instance, Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki and how he creates works and stuff, is like when they're creating their movies, they probably don't even factor in like the overseas markets. I think that's a cool little statement from him, because the reason why that's cool is because Ghibli is, like, considered the Japanese Disney, so to speak. It is. At least in certain communities, it's always been talked about like that. And the fact that Miyazaki isn't potentially focusing on, like, overseas markets and just focus on writing what he wants to write in Studio Ghibli, I think is, a really nice little detail. It kind of gives insight into just why these movies do so well, why people love them, is because they're fundamentally different. But I'm really loving the fact that there's just so many people within the industry talking about this. Like, you have politicians, you have illustrators, manga authors, and everybody talking about the situation right now, and how, like, there is a push to try to change anime and manga, and you have these creators within Japan that are basically saying we don't want to allow this to happen. We want to keep our culture how it always has been, and this is nice. I love the conversation around this right now, and that it seems to be resonating with a lot of people around the world in many different spaces, not just, let's say, within the West, but even within Japan, it is being talked about, and this is the best news, honestly. It's the best Christmas gift I could have gotten today in terms of anime and manga related news. This is just great. I'm just so happy about this, and on top of that as well, this made my respect for Hideaki Anno even higher than it already was. I've always thought he was a very gifted individual with what he's created, but the fact that he made a statement like this, and now he's causing a lot of other people to speak up about it, I feel like the tides and are changing or shifting to a degree, and like I said, you know, in many other videos, I feel like we're going to see a shift. We're going to have probably creators, you know, shift off and become like, you know, the traditional anime and manga industry that we've always known for decades, and then you're going to have a new industry that's going to form, that's going to be more like the modern triple A gaming industry that is trying to conform to global audiences. That's probably what's going to happen, and I feel like Hideaki Anno more or less is going to be a big voice to side with, like, I guess you could kind of say the indie side of the anime and manga industry. I know that's not a proper term here, but you get my point. Hopefully you understand the analogy I'm trying to go with. But, yeah, great stuff, man. Just great news. I'm glad I can share this today with all of you. I'm glad to see just so much conversation around it. Yeah, but I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everyone. Chibi out.